Hello everybody, this is Drive Team Essentials with Team 4265. I am Silas, the programming lead and the secondary driver on our team.
I'm Devin, I'm the mechanical lead and the primary driver.
And I am Freeze, and I'm in charge of strategy and statistical data.
So one thing I'd like to start off with is our practice field. So this is an opportunity that all of you are welcome to take advantage of. This is our practice field. It's here it's not here. It's in Oak Ridge. But if you are interested in using this facility, you can contact any of our mentors or contact us at our business email that we will have on the presentation at the end of on the slides at the end of the presentation.
Selecting a drive team is something kind of hard to do, especially on a student perspective, but with everybody on our drive team being a senior this year, practically besides one new student replacing our human player, we've had to go looking. And the ways we go looking are, number one, at our practice field, just doing drills that we'll talk about a little later, so that kids can get familiar with the joystick and actually start interacting with the robot, but mainly from off-season competitions like WV Rocks and Robo Rodeo, where, yes, sometimes our drivers like to go a little crazy and hit robots very hard. Sorry, Web. And other times they don't drive in a straight line, but it's okay because they're all learning.
So preseason prep, we like to go into the season with a fully done drive base. So last year was our 2023 robot where we took everything off and just kept the swerve drive. This helps with autonomous, and if you wanted to, you can get on the field and do some cycles without your intake or a shooter just to get used to the surroundings of the field. And then with the new updates this season, you could have your parts ready to go for your drive base. So this year we're still making our custom swerves, and we're getting closer to having those done, but all those parts will not have to be machined in season, hopefully. And then give your drive team stick time before kickoff. So usually we struggle to get drive practice before the first competition, but since I've driven in the off season and Silas has driven in the off season, we don't have any issues going to the first competition with not having stick time. Build a drivable robot. So we like to keep all of our robots with a low CG, so just to prevent tipping, and so you can push your joystick all the way up without worrying about flipping. The thing we did this year was wide game piece acquisition area. So we had a full width intake, so we could basically just throw our robot at a game piece and it will pretty much pick it up anytime. Build a sturdy robot so you can slam yourself into other robots. Or the trusses if you're driving a lights out match and you can't drive.
That's what off-season competitions are for.
And then automate as much as possible. You're trying to get as much off the driver's mind as you can, and if it's just one button to score, that's going to be a lot easier to drive it.
So there's a lot of benefits of drive practice. The first one is really just getting used to your robot. So having your driver behind the glass with the controller and being able to know what happens when any functions of the code that are really important to the robot, the driver just getting used to how those work, all the delays, all of the timings of everything, and driving matches and stuff like that before you actually get out into a real field. It also allows you to find any of the problems that are inevitably in your robot every single year. There's always bugs in the code. It doesn't matter how many times you've used that same piece of code, it always will break the first time. And I know that from experience. We've had a lot of code bugs throughout the years. Of course, mechanical failures, all kinds of loose bolts. Some new person, decided to assemble something and forgot the Loctite, or forgot how to use a wrench or something. And things fall apart. Some things just don't work, and it's really nice to know that before you get to a competition. And then testing all of the different combinations of people being on the field. So before you get to a competition, if you're just driving your robot around in the open, that's nothing like a competition. There's always, when you get to a competition, you're going to be surprised by the other 5 robots who are there and also trying to score the same points, being in the same places as you. And so having your robot out on a field with other robots, so here you can see we have, this was a time that we did some drive practice at Vio Largo at our practice field with Sono Robo 6517, and We had a practice robot here, which just had a big wall on it, so we could adjust to defense. And we just had them in a couple different places. So over by the, I forgot the names.
Over by the source and the feeder station, and then by the speaker.
And then also being able to work with them as a team, getting used to having other robots with you and against you, really helps a lot. And then also, drive practice is a lot cheaper than a competition. Going to competitions costs a lot of money, and also it contributes to your ranking. And if you do drive practice instead, it doesn't cost you anything, and you can get a lot better and get a lot better results.
Drive practice drills. So usually every season, once we have our field mostly assembled, we like to start off slow, just getting the robot through its motions and the paths. And then we like to speed it up. And once we're fully sped up, we like to go into auto, tele up, and end game all in one cycle. So you have that time pressure, and you have you know where you are in your cycle. So once you get into competition, nothing surprising time-wise. And so once you find all your flaws, we like to single out elements to improve on. Like this year, we had issues with intaking from afar, and so we basically just wanted to single that out and just practice intaking with a defense bot there. And with defense bots, we like to keep an old drive base around. This year we were using our 2022 robot to kind of just sit there and move around. It also had a shifting swerve, so it was able to push back against what we could push. And it's also a good time to just train backup drivers. Practicing different routes, so like we said before, with defense at different places, we like to set that up, or just going under the stage versus around the stage and working with other robots. And one thing we just like to talk about at drive practice is identify a plan B. So if your intake or your shooter goes out, you could play defense, or you could push notes with the side of your robot, stuff like that. So we like to keep our drive team and our pit team the same. And so, as you see everyone, you got programming, electrical, mechanical, and then Freeze's strategy. And so we like to keep the strategy out of the drive team, not because we don't like him necessarily, but because it just takes one thing off the driver's mind. Freeze is constantly running around trying to find all the other teams, put together a strategy that will inevitably fall apart 30 seconds into the match. You could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, one of the things that strategy is really important of is drivers have a lot on their minds, as Devin said. You are fixing a robot, in our case, because of pit stand and drive team being together. You're focusing on driving in a match, and you're also trying to focus on just the chaos of people coming up to you and asking you for speed outs. We're looking at a couple teams that did that a lot at our RCR. But the strategy lead is really in charge of going to a team and saying, hey, are you ready to go? Hey, are you ready to go? Hey, are you ready to go? Because a lot of teams, they have a match before you and they break down, or they have a match that they come back from and they're broken down. And you need to just adapt on the fly and go really quickly. You're also in charge of making sure they get to their matches. A lot of teams are pretty bad at time management nowadays.
Well, another reason we keep our pit team or drive team the same is if we have a issue during the match and say an intake goes out, I will mechanically look at it first, and at the same time, Silas will look at it in programming. Sometimes it'll be mechanical, sometimes it'll be programming. And
But the thing is, we're both on the field, and we both saw what happened, so
Yeah.
we can be there and diagnose and figure out what's wrong.
Yep. And then we also like to have our back coach very in-depth in the strategy. And so that helps us mid-match. When the driver forgets the strategy, the drive coach will keep the driver normally on track. But when things go wrong, like a robot goes down, the back coach can be there to help adjust your strategy. And if you were lobbing to a team that was shooting, you may have to come back and start shooting.
To go further on that, we use something called the 50-50 message. It's where we spend We spend the first day collecting quantitative data or number data. It's data that is hard that we can look at and we can actually base things off of, such as number of cycles, number of game pieces shot into speaker, total number of shots, stuff that we can actually accurately track. And then around day 2, right before we go on to line selection, we like to do qualitative data, or as I like to call it, feelings data. Stuff like that driver is great, or that robot stopped running. Stuff that's more opinionated rather than statistical. If you run either one just purely, you struggle with the issue of having somebody or some statistic outnumbering, or a team just having a set of really good matches and then falling off, which can cause issues. Or you just have a student that really likes a team, like Silas loves Sono so much, he won't ever say anything negative about them. So if you put those two in conjunction, you can usually make the best picks off of that. Some tips though for strategy collecting data is in the stands, people don't want to sit there on their phones and click the same 9 buttons for 6 hours straight. So have a couple people to shift things around, make things interesting, but also have spares. And then also have a dedicated person up top to actually just help and coordinate a schedule, candy, games, or just be there when somebody wants to use the bathroom. Next slide, Devin. And then once you have all of the data, it becomes a little bit fuzzy because now you have to compile it into something that looks pretty. We use Tableau to make very pretty graphs like the one shown, because Excel documents are not very fun to look at or shift through. You can get a free access to Tableau going through First, or if you have a student email, you can also get a free copy of Tableau. You just have to go through the website, it's a little weird. We also like to do full field analysis. This is very important in 2 game piece years like this year. Most teams are really great at doing 1 game piece rather than 2. In 2023, as I'm going to go back to Sono, was really great at doing very low cubes, and statistical data showed that. But getting their cone launcher to launch them up, we weren't able to see that statistically very well. That allows us to make choices in line selection, but also know where to put people and or adapt, because the back coach, who is really in tune with strategy, will also know this data and be able to adapt on the fly.
In-match driving. So you usually should be able to stick to the strategy, but most of the time the strategy will go south. Either a robot goes out, your robot goes out, or whatever you're doing just isn't working. That's where we like to have our back coach call different strategies on the fly and be very in tune with what we can do. So during WV Rocks and Robo Rodeo, Freeze was the back coach, and there's a lot of times our partners went out and we basically had to change how we were doing things. So a backup plan we had to do this year was our intakes went out. It was a code problem. Everything else was fine, but we were able just to push notes sideways, and then once we funneled all the notes to our side of the field, we then started playing defense in a zone. And all of that was just on the fly, and none of it was really rehearsed. And one thing I really want to harp on is don't worry about winning or losing. Worry about executing your game strategy. In 2023, we went 10-0 during quals at Worlds, but throughout all the matches, I was just focused on hitting the strategy, making sure we got where we needed to be, and not about having a perfect record.
And the most important thing is really just to have fun. That's why we're all here. That's why we come to these competitions, build these robots, is because it's fun. Making robots is really cool, but the people who make them are even cooler. And I think one of the main things is I don't remember any of the matches that I did at SMR or any of the stuff that I've driven, but I do remember the people who I drove with, and especially, I mean, you can see how much I like Sono Robo, but I'm still very good friends with a lot of people on that team and a lot of people on other teams as well, and it's nice to be able to go there, have fun, and just enjoy the competition. It's not all about winning or losing. It's about enjoying your matches.
Q&A time.